On my way to the supermarket, I suddenly realized I'd left my wallet at home. Annoyed, I turned back, but what I overheard through the window that afternoon changed everything. Please stay with me until the end of my story and comment the city or country you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story reaches. I was halfway to the grocery store when I noticed my wallet wasn't in my bag. At 63, I was used to small lapses like that, but it still frustrated me. I'd been excited to cook my daughter Ren's favorite casserole for dinner. She and her husband Wade were coming over tonight, and I wanted everything to be perfect. The drive back home felt unusually long. These weekly dinners meant the world to me. After losing my husband 5 years ago, those evenings with Ren and Wade had become the highlight of my week. Wade wasn't the warmest person, but he made Ren happy. And that was all I ever wanted. When I pulled into my driveway, I noticed their car was already there. That was odd. They weren't supposed to arrive for another 3 hours. Maybe Ren had come early to help like she'd been doing lately. Part of me appreciated her concern, though another part quietly wondered if she thought I couldn't manage things on my own anymore. As I approached the front door, I heard voices coming from the living room window I'd left slightly open to air out the house. I moved closer, planning to grab my wallet quietly. But then I froze. How much longer do we have to keep this up? Wade's tone was sharp, impatient, unlike anything I'd heard from him before. I don't know, Ren replied, sounding tense. But we don't have a choice. We just have to wait. My hand hovered over the doorknob, my heart pounding. Something about their tone made me step back instead of going in. She's starting to get suspicious, Wade said. Yesterday she asked why I was looking through those papers on her desk. My breath caught. What papers? I told her I was just helping organize things, Ren answered. But she's not naive, Wade. She's going to figure out what we're doing. The world seemed to tilt. What were they doing? Look, Ren continued, we've come too far to stop now. Once we get the diagnosis confirmed, everything will get easier. Diagnosis? My chest tightened. Were they talking about me? About my health? I just think we should speed things up, Wade said. The longer we wait, the more chances she has to ruin everything. Don't rush this, Ren warned. It has to look natural, or it all falls apart. The air around me felt heavy. My knees almost gave out. I'm just tired of pretending to care about every little thing she complains about, Wade muttered. Do you know she called me yesterday because she couldn't adjust the thermostat? I almost told her to figure it out herself. The words cut deep. Every kind gesture, every small favor, it had all been an act. You need to stay patient, Ren said quietly. We can't let her suspect anything. Not yet. Easy for you to say, Wade sighed. You don't have to listen to her stories every day. Tears blurred my vision. These weren't the voices of two people who cared about me. They sounded like strangers, cold, calculating. Just a little longer, Ren said. Once the doctor confirms everything, we can move forward with the plan. And you're sure he'll help? He owes me a favor. And we're not asking him to lie, just to speed things up. I could barely breathe. What process? What plan? My thoughts spun with dread. Were they planning to have me declared unfit to manage my own affairs? Send me away somewhere? I still think we should have done this months ago, Wade muttered. If we'd moved too soon, she might have involved her lawyer. Lawyer? My stomach dropped. Why would they be worried about that unless... Fine, Wade said, but after this weekend I want a timeline. I can't keep pretending much longer. This weekend? Ren asked. She wants me to help her organize her important papers. Says she wants everything in order, just in case. It's perfect timing. My heart stopped. I had asked Wade to help me organize my documents this Saturday. I thought it was simply a responsible thing to do. A way to make things easier for everyone. But now, it felt like I'd handed them the perfect opportunity. But now, it sounded sinister, like they were planning to use my documents for something entirely different. Just be careful what you touch, Ren warned. We can't leave any sign that we were looking for specific things. That word, signs. It echoed in my head. Signs of what? I heard movement inside and instinctively stepped away from the window, my heart pounding so loud I thought they'd hear it. I fumbled with my keys, unsure what to do. Should I walk in and pretend nothing happened, or confront them right there? Before I could decide, the front door opened. "Mom!" Wren's voice was bright, cheerful, completely different from the one I'd just heard. "What are you doing out here?" I turned, hoping my face didn't reveal anything. "Oh, I just realized I forgot my wallet," I said lightly, was about to come in. Wade appeared behind her, his expression calm but his eyes sharp, observant. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Of course," I replied with a forced smile. "Just one of those forgetful moments." Wren laughed softly, but now it sounded rehearsed. "Well, come on in," she said. "We decided to come early and help you with dinner." As I followed them inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking straight into a trap. Everything looked familiar. The family photos on the wall, the same cozy living room my late husband and I had built together, yet nothing felt safe anymore. "So," I asked, trying to sound casual, "what were you two talking about just now?" "Oh, just work stuff," Wade answered quickly. "Office matters, nothing interesting." But I knew that was a lie. They hadn't been talking about work. They'd been talking about me, about some plan and a diagnosis I apparently needed. Over the next few days, life felt like a performance. I did all my usual routines, watering the garden, reading the morning paper, calling my sister Margaret. But every moment was shadowed by what I'd overheard. Every conversation with Wren or Wade became a puzzle I was trying to solve. Every smile felt false, every glance suspicious. How long had they been pretending? How long had I been blind to it? 3 days later, Wade arrived as planned to help me organize my documents. I'd been dreading it, but canceling would only raise questions. "Thanks for doing this," I said, leading him to my home office. "Not exactly a fun way to spend your Saturday." "No problem at all," he replied smoothly, but his eyes were already scanning the room, taking in my desk, filing cabinet, and the small safe where I kept important papers. We began sorting through bank statements and insurance files. I noticed he lingered over documents related to my house, investments, and will. Then, when he thought I wasn't looking, I caught a flash. His phone. "Wade, what are you doing?" I asked, my voice calm but tight. He looked startled. "Oh, just taking a picture of the account number so I can help you set up online banking later. Is that okay?" It sounded innocent enough, but something in his expression didn't match his tone. "That's thoughtful," I said carefully, "but I think I'm fine without online banking." "Trust me," he said with a small smile. "It'll make things easier, especially if—" He stopped himself. "Especially if what?" I asked. "Nothing," he said quickly. "Just if you ever need help managing things." There it was again, that quiet assumption that I was no longer capable. Later that afternoon, while Wade continued his organizing, I excused myself to make coffee. But instead of going to the kitchen, I stopped just outside the office door. His voice was low but clear enough. "Yeah, I'm here now." "No, she doesn't suspect anything. I got photos of the account statements. The house deed's here too." "No, I can't take anything now. She's in the next room." "Yeah, I know. We need to move faster." My hands began to shake. The truth hit me hard. He wasn't helping. He was collecting. I quickly stepped away and forced myself to breathe. When I returned with the coffee, Wade was calmly sitting at my desk, flipping through tax returns like nothing had happened. "Find everything you need?" I asked softly, setting down his cup. "Yes," he said with an easy smile. "You're very organized. You should be proud." But I heard the emptiness in his voice. That night, after he left, I sat at my computer for hours. I searched for ways to check if someone had been accessing my accounts or tampering with personal records. What I discovered chilled me. Story after story described families slowly taking control of a relative's affairs, convincing doctors, manipulating paperwork, fabricating doubt. And the victims always said the same thing. They never saw it coming. The next morning, I picked up the phone and called my doctor's office. Dr. Martinez's office, this is Lisa speaking. Hi, this is Sher Walsh, I said, trying to sound calm. I was just wondering if there were any recent test results or upcoming appointments I might have forgotten about. There was a short pause, the sound of typing on the other end. Let me check your file, Mrs. Walsh. There's a note here that your daughter called yesterday. She asked about scheduling some cognitive assessments. She seemed quite concerned about your memory. My heart stopped. My daughter called? About cognitive tests? Yes, Lisa said gently. She mentioned some incidents that worried her and wanted to know what kind of early screening we offer. I hung up with shaking hands. My daughter had called my doctor behind my back, asking for mental evaluations I didn't need. She was creating a paper trail, building a case that would make me look incapable. Over the next few days, the puzzle pieces began to fit together, and the picture they formed was horrifying. Wren had been asking questions I'd once brushed off as simple curiosity: who the executor of my will was, where the original documents were kept, whether I'd considered updating it. She'd suggested adding Wade's name to my bank account just in case, or putting the house in both our names for tax purposes. At the time, those ideas had sounded caring, a daughter's concern for her aging mother. But now I saw them clearly for what they were: carefully planned steps toward taking control. I started keeping a journal, writing down every suspicious comment, every odd question, every small moment that didn't feel right. And once I saw the pattern, I couldn't unsee it. Exactly 1 week after Wade's visit, the phone rang again. Mrs. Walsh, this is Dr. Martinez. I understand your daughter has shared some concerns about your cognitive health. I'd like to schedule a full evaluation. What kind of concerns? I asked, even though I already knew. She mentioned memory problems, confusion about finances, and some difficulty with daily routines. He explained gently. At your age, we like to take these things seriously. But none of it was true. My finances were organized, my routines were intact, my memory was fine. Yet somehow Wren had convinced my doctor otherwise. When would you like to schedule this? I asked, forcing a steady tone. How about next Friday at 2 p.m.? That works, I said softly. But it didn't. Nothing about it did. After hanging up, I stared at the note I'd written on the kitchen counter. Next Friday, 2 p.m. Cognitive evaluation. In 1 week, my own daughter would try to make me appear unfit. Why? Then it hit me. Wade photographing my documents, Wren's questions about my will, their whispered talk of plans. If I were declared mentally incapable, they could petition for guardianship. They would gain full control over my money, my home, even my medical choices. They could sell my house, move me somewhere I didn't want to go, and I'd have no power to stop them. As I sat alone in my quiet kitchen, surrounded by 40 years of memories, something unexpected stirred inside me. Not fear, not sorrow, but resolve. They thought I was weak. They thought I'd simply hand over my life. They were wrong. The night before my appointment, sleep refused to come. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined sitting in that office while the doctor asked questions designed to make me sound confused. What lies had Wren told? What story had she spun to make me look fragile? At 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and turned on my computer. If they were building a case against me, I needed to understand how. For hours, I read everything I could find about guardianship laws, competency hearings, and cases of family manipulation. What I learned was worse than I'd imagined. Once declared incompetent, reversing that decision was nearly impossible. Guardians gained nearly unlimited control. They could sell property, close accounts, even dictate medical care, all for the person's benefit. By the time dawn crept through the curtains, my mind was spinning, and then a sound, footsteps, on my front porch. It was barely 6 a.m. I peeked through the curtains and saw Wren's car parked in my driveway. She had a key, but she'd never used it this early before. The front door opened quietly. I froze as I heard her whisper to someone. She's probably still asleep. Let's be quick. My heart thundered in my chest as I crept to the top of the stairs, every instinct screaming that something terrible was about to begin. Through the banister, I watched as Ren and Wade moved quietly through my living room toward my office. "Did you bring the camera?" Ren whispered. "Yeah," Wade replied, "and the scanner app. We can get digital copies of everything without taking the originals." My stomach turned. I stayed perfectly still as they stepped inside my office. The door was slightly open, and I could see them working in eerie coordination, Wade holding papers while Ren snapped photo after photo with her phone. "Here's the original will," Wade said quietly. "She never updated it after your dad passed." "Perfect," Ren replied, her tone cold and precise. "That means I'm still the sole beneficiary. We just have to make sure she doesn't change it before we get guardianship." The words hit me like ice water. They weren't just planning to control my life, they wanted to take everything before I was even gone. "What about the house deed?" Ren asked. "Got it. Free and clear," Wade said. "Worth about $400,000 according to the latest assessment." "Good. We'll need that equity for her care costs," Ren said flatly, as if she were discussing numbers on a spreadsheet. "Care costs?" Wade gave a low chuckle. "You mean our costs. State facilities are way cheaper than private ones." I gripped the railing so hard my knuckles went white. They were planning to send me away, to some low-cost home, while using everything I'd worked for to fund their lifestyle. "Look at this," Ren said, lifting another folder. "She's got over $300,000 in investments, plus her pension and benefits. How much does that total each month?" "About $8,000, Wade answered. "More than enough to cover a basic facility and still have plenty left over." They were calculating my worth like property at auction. Every dollar I'd saved for security and peace in my later years was being converted into their profit. "Did you get the bank information?" Ren asked. "Yeah." "And I found the safety deposit box listed in her insurance records," Wade said. "We'll need access to that, too." "One thing at a time," Ren said. "First, we get the competency ruling, then guardianship. After that, everything's legally ours." I'd heard enough. My body was trembling as I crept back to my bedroom, heart hammering in my chest. They had planned everything, months, maybe years in advance. Every act of kindness, every dinner visit, every word of concern, all part of a slow, deliberate trap. An hour later, after they left, I went downstairs. Everything looked perfectly in place. My office was neat, untouched. But I knew better. They now had digital copies of my entire life. I made coffee with shaking hands and tried to think clearly. Less than 12 hours remained before my appointment with Dr. Martinez. Whatever I was going to do, I had to do it fast. First, I called my lawyer's office and left an urgent message requesting an immediate consultation. Then I called my bank, asking about procedures to change account access and safeguard my assets. Finally, I made one more call, one that broke my heart to even consider. "Sherry, it's not even 8 o'clock," my sister answered groggy. "Margaret," I said, my voice trembling, "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully." For the next 30 minutes, I told her everything. The conversation I'd overheard, Wade's strange behavior, Ren's call to my doctor, and what I'd just witnessed that morning. Margaret stayed silent for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, heavy with sadness. "Oh, honey," she said quietly. "I was afraid something like this might happen." "What do you mean?" I asked, stunned. "Ren's been asking me questions about you for months, little things, about your health, your memory, if I'd noticed any changes. I thought she was just being a caring daughter." "What kind of questions?" "She asked if you ever seemed confused, if you were managing your bills okay, if I thought you should still be driving. She even hinted that you might need daily help." My stomach tightened. She was building a case. "It sounds like it," Margaret said softly. "She made it seem harmless, but now I realize she was gathering information to use against you." The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. Not only had Ren plotted behind my back, she'd used my own sister to reinforce the illusion. Margaret, I said firmly. If anyone contacts you about my mental state, I need you to tell them the truth. That I'm fine. That I'm completely capable. Of course I will, she promised. But, Sherry, what are you going to do about the appointment? I'm keeping it, I said, but I'm not going alone. After hanging up, I called Dr. Martinez's office once more. This is Cher Walsh, I said evenly. I'd like to bring someone with me to my appointment today, just for moral support. Is that allowed? Of course, Mrs. Walsh, the receptionist replied. Family members are always welcome. I hung up the phone and exhaled slowly. They thought they had me cornered, but they were about to learn I wasn't done fighting. Actually, I said slowly, I'd prefer to bring my attorney. There was a pause on the line. Your attorney, Mrs. Walsh. This is just a routine evaluation. I understand, I replied calmly. But since this assessment was requested based on concerns I don't share, I'd feel more comfortable having legal representation present. Another pause. Let me check with Dr. Martinez and call you back. 20 minutes later, the phone rang again. Mrs. Walsh, Dr. Martinez would like to postpone your appointment until he's had a chance to review your file more thoroughly. I smiled to myself as I hung up. Mentioning my attorney had clearly made them uneasy. If this really was just a harmless routine check, why would a doctor hesitate about my bringing legal counsel? But my brief satisfaction faded quickly. If Wren and Wade couldn't get what they wanted through Dr. Martinez, they'd simply find another way. They had too much invested in their plan to give up now. I spent the rest of the morning locking down every part of my life. I moved my savings into new accounts Wade didn't know existed. I updated my will to include a clause preventing anyone from inheriting if they were also serving as my guardian, and I began setting up a legal trust to protect my assets from manipulation. Still, deep down, I knew it might not be enough. They already had copies of my documents, false testimony about my confusion, and at least one professional willing to vouch for them. I was reviewing the new trust paperwork when the phone rang again. Mom! Wren's voice was light and cheerful. I heard you postponed your doctor's appointment. Everything okay? Everything's fine, I said, steadying my voice. I just wanted to reschedule for a time when you could come with me. Oh, that's sweet, she said smoothly. I was planning to come anyway. I've just been so worried about you lately. Worried? The word made my skin crawl. Worried about what? I asked. You know, little things, she said breezily. You've seemed more forgetful lately, and last week you got mixed up with your bank statement. I didn't get mixed up, I said firmly. I questioned a charge that turned out to be legitimate. But in Wren's version of events, my careful financial management had become proof of confusion. I'm fine, sweetheart, I said, keeping my tone light. But thank you for checking. Mom, she continued, I really think it's time we make things easier for you. Maybe add my name to your accounts just in case something happens. There it was, the next step, delivered in the same sweet, loving voice I'd once trusted. That's something we can discuss, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Good, she said warmly. I just want to help. You shouldn't have to handle everything alone. But I was alone, surrounded by people pretending to care while quietly dismantling my life. As I set the phone down, I realized this was no longer about money or property. They were rewriting who I was, turning me into the fragile, forgetful woman they needed me to become. But they'd made one fatal mistake. They'd underestimated me. 2 days after the postponed appointment, the truth began to unravel. While sorting my mail, I noticed something strange. A few envelopes were missing, specifically anything from my doctor, my bank, or my insurance company. At first I blamed slow mail delivery, but then I remembered something Wade had said about intercepting correspondence. A cold suspicion settled over me. I called my bank. Mrs. Walsh, the representative said, we've been sending your statements to the address you requested, 523 Maple Street. My blood ran cold. I didn't request any change, I said. I live on Oak Avenue. There was a pause. Let me check. Yes, it looks like the change was made 3 weeks ago by someone identifying themselves as your daughter, acting under power of attorney. I never gave my daughter power of attorney. Another silence, heavier this time. Ma'am, I think you should come in and speak with a manager immediately. At the bank, the full scope of their deception came to light. Someone, claiming to be my daughter, had submitted forged legal documents, changed my mailing address, and requested full financial records. They'd even asked about adding new authorized users and transferring funds into a trust account. The paperwork looked legitimate, the manager explained. Whoever submitted it had all my personal information, even my identification number. "Do you have security footage?" I asked. "We can check," he said. "Can you come back tomorrow morning?" That evening, I drove to the Maple Street address listed on the account. It was a small office building downtown, quiet except for a single glowing window. At exactly 6 o'clock, Wade walked out, holding a thick stack of envelopes. My mail. I followed him at a distance as he drove across town to a small rental property. Not their home, but a secret second location. From the shadows, I watched as he carried the envelopes inside. Through the window, I saw Wren waiting for him. They began sorting through the mail at a table piled high with papers and folders. In that moment, I understood. This wasn't a spontaneous act of greed. It was a long, methodical scheme, one they had prepared for months, maybe years. And now I finally had proof. This was no impulsive act of greed. It was a carefully orchestrated operation they'd been planning for months. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, watching them through the window as they sorted through what looked like weeks of my stolen mail. They opened envelopes, photographed the contents, filed everything neatly into boxes. They were building a complete dossier on my life, while cutting me off from it. When I finally got home, I called the only person I could trust. "Paul, it's Cher Walsh. I need you to listen carefully. I think I'm being targeted by my own family." Paul Harris had been my attorney for 15 years. He'd handled my husband's estate and had known my family through our best and worst moments, but what I told him that night left him silent for several seconds. "Sherry," he said finally, his voice grave, "what you're describing sounds like a coordinated attempt to gain legal control over you. Unfortunately, it happens more often than people think, but this is criminal fraud." "What do I do?" I asked, my voice shaking. "First, we go to the bank tomorrow. You'll sign a notarized statement revoking any unauthorized access to your accounts. Then, we file a police report for document forgery and identity theft." He hesitated before continuing. "But, Sherry, if they've been preparing this for months, they may already have other pieces in motion." "What kind of pieces?" "If they're serious about taking over your affairs, they'll need medical evidence. If your regular doctor wouldn't cooperate, they might have found someone else who will." Paul's words proved prophetic. The next morning, I got a call from a woman I'd never heard of. "Mrs. Walsh, this is Dr. Patricia Simmons. Your daughter has scheduled you for a full cognitive evaluation next Monday. She's quite concerned about your condition." "My daughter has no authority to schedule medical appointments for me," I said sharply. "Actually," the doctor replied, "she provided documentation showing she has medical power of attorney." Another forged document. "Dr. Simmons," I said calmly, "those papers are fraudulent. I've never granted anyone medical authority over me." There was a long silence on the line. "Mrs. Walsh, your daughter was very convincing. She gave detailed examples. Missed appointments, confusion about medications, issues managing your finances." "All lies," I interrupted. "Well," the doctor sighed, "perhaps we should still meet, just to evaluate things properly." "No, thank you," I said firmly. "My health is my own responsibility, and I already have a physician." Even as I hung up, I knew this wasn't the end. If they couldn't find one doctor to cooperate, they'd find another. That afternoon, Paul and I drove to the police station to file an official report for identity theft and forgery. Detective Maria Santos listened intently as we explained everything: the forged documents, the intercepted mail, the attempts to take control of my accounts. "Mrs. Walsh," she said finally, "this is a sophisticated type of family fraud. It usually centers on one thing: money." "My estate is worth around $700,000, I admitted quietly. She nodded. That explains their persistence. Have you noticed any other changes? Anything with your insurance, property deeds, or will? I told her about Wade photographing my documents during his visit to help organize paperwork. We need to act fast, the detective said. If they're moving toward an emergency guardianship, they could try to have you declared unfit within days. Days? I whispered. Yes. If they claim you're a danger to yourself, a judge can issue a temporary guardianship order almost immediately. If they've got falsified medical evidence, that might be all they need. Paul leaned forward. What can we do right now to protect her? 3 things, Detective Santos said. First, document everything. Calls, messages, visits. Record them if possible. Second, work with your bank to flag your accounts. And third, Mrs. Walsh, you might need to stay somewhere else for a while. Stay somewhere else? I repeated. This is my home. I understand, she said gently. But if they move quickly and claim you're unstable, they might try to have you taken for evaluation. Once that happens, getting out of the system becomes much harder. Her words hit like a punch. I wasn't just fighting betrayal anymore. I was fighting for my freedom. That evening, I sat in my living room surrounded by decades of memories. Photographs of Ren as a baby, her first day of school, her wedding day. Moments that once filled me with pride now felt like reminders of everything I'd lost. When had my daughter become capable of this? When had love turned into leverage? My phone rang, breaking the silence. Mom, I've been trying to reach you all day. Are you okay? Ren's voice was calm, smooth, the same carefully crafted concern she always used. I'm fine, I said softly. Just been busy. Busy with what? She asked, her tone sweet but probing. I smiled faintly into the receiver. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of her question. I already knew how this game would end. You seemed a little confused yesterday, Ren said gently, when we talked about your appointment with Dr. Martinez. There it was again, that subtle, polished phrase designed to sound caring, while quietly reinforcing her story that I was slipping. I wasn't confused, I said evenly. I simply decided to postpone it. Mom, we really need to talk, she continued, her tone soft but calculated. I'm worried about you. Wade and I have been discussing it, and we think you might need a little more help than you're willing to admit. What kind of help? Well, maybe someone to assist with daily tasks, managing your medications, keeping track of appointments. Nothing major, just support. Support. The word landed like a threat. It would give them access to my home, my routine, my private life, everything they needed to finish what they'd started. That's thoughtful, I said carefully, but I'm managing just fine on my own. Are you, though? She pressed. Be honest, Mom. Haven't you been feeling overwhelmed lately? No, Ren, I haven't. What about your bills? Are you sure you're keeping up with everything correctly? My bills are current and accurate. And your medications? You're taking them consistently? Yes. She hesitated, then added, Mrs. Henderson said she saw you looking confused in your garden last week. I almost laughed. Mrs. Henderson was 85 and rarely left her porch, and her porch didn't even face my garden. Ren, I said calmly, Mrs. Henderson can't see my garden from her house. A pause. Maybe it was Mrs. Thompson then. Another lie. Mrs. Thompson had been in Florida for a month. Ren, why are you making up stories about me? I'm not making anything up, Mom, she said quickly. I'm just concerned. Wade and I think you should see someone who specializes in senior wellness, like Dr. Simmons. I froze. How do you know about Dr. Simmons? She called me, Ren replied smoothly. She called you because you scheduled an appointment for me, I said sharply, without my permission. Mom, you agreed to see someone, Ren countered. We discussed it. No, we didn't, I said. And you have no authority to make medical decisions for me. Mom, you're getting upset. This is exactly what worries me. You're not thinking clearly. Her tone shifted, no longer concern but gentle condescension. It was masterful manipulation. Anything I said now could be twisted into proof of confusion. "I'm thinking very clearly," I said quietly. "Clear enough to know exactly what you and Wade are doing." "What are we doing, Mom?" she asked, voice full of feigned innocence. For a moment, her performance was so smooth I almost doubted myself. But then I remembered everything. The forged papers, the stolen mail, the secret office filled with my documents. "We'll discuss it when you come for dinner on Sunday," I said at last. "Okay, Mom, I love you." "I love you too," I replied, and for the first time in my life the words felt hollow. As I hung up, I realized love alone wouldn't save me anymore. They were closing in, and I had only days left to act. The week before Sunday's dinner became a blur of careful preparation. With Paul's help, I had small recording devices installed throughout the house, legal since it was my property. Detective Santos coached me on how to guide conversations, how to stay calm, and how to draw out the admissions we needed. My sister Margaret agreed to stand by as a witness, ready to arrive if things escalated. But the most important part of my plan was something no one would see coming. I was going to give Ren and Wade exactly what they wanted, or at least make them believe I was. Sunday arrived gray and cold, the sky heavy with rain. I spent the morning cooking Ren's favorite meal, a ritual that once brought comfort. But this time, every familiar movement felt like a goodbye, a farewell to the illusion of family, of safety, of love, untainted by greed. They arrived right on time, 5 o'clock sharp. Ren kissed my cheek, complimenting the smell of dinner. Wade shook my hand politely and asked about my week. To anyone watching, we were the picture of a normal family gathering. "Mom, you look tired," Ren said as we sat down. "Are you sleeping okay?" It was a simple question, but I could hear the trap beneath it. Any hint of fatigue could become another symptom in her growing list of fabricated concerns. "I've been sleeping fine," I said lightly, "though I have been thinking a lot lately." "About what?" Wade asked, cutting his roast with careful precision. "About getting older, about the future, and about how much I rely on both of you." They exchanged a quick, silent glance, so subtle I might have missed it before. "We're always here for you, Mom," Ren said softly. "Whatever you need." "That's what I wanted to talk about," I continued. "I've realized maybe I do need more help than I've admitted." Ren set down her fork, eyes sharpening. "What kind of help?" "Well," I said, my tone measured, "managing my finances has become more complicated lately. All these accounts, property expenses, paperwork. Maybe it would be easier if someone else handled the details." "Mom, we've talked about this before," Ren said eagerly. "I'd be happy to help with your accounts." "And my medical appointments have been confusing lately," I added. "Different doctors, referrals, all these follow-ups." I paused just long enough to let them think I was hesitating, to make them believe their victory was near. "Maybe I should have someone go with me," I said slowly, pretending to sound uncertain. "Just to help me keep everything straight." Wade leaned forward, his voice calm and reassuring. "That's very wise, Sherry. It's important to have someone you trust in those situations." "I've also been thinking about this house," I added softly. "It's so big for one person. Keeping up with everything is becoming a lot." Ren's tone was carefully neutral. "Have you thought about what you might want to do?" "I don't know," I said, forcing hesitation into my voice. "Maybe something smaller, easier to manage, or maybe even assisted living, if I could find the right place." The words tasted like poison, but I saw the spark of excitement in their eyes, that flicker of barely contained triumph. "Mom, those are really important decisions," Ren said gently. "Maybe we should sit down this week and go through everything together." "I'd like that," I replied. Then I looked between them and added, "But first I need to ask you both something, and I need you to be completely honest." They tensed. "Of course," Ren said carefully. "Do you think I'm losing my mind?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I watched their faces, every twitch, every calculation, as they carefully chose their responses. "Mom, why would you ask that?" Wren's voice was soft, but her eyes betrayed caution. "Because I've been having some strange moments lately," I said, lowering my voice. "Forgetting things, mixing up dates. Last week I couldn't remember if I'd paid my electric bill. I even found myself standing in the kitchen, not knowing why I went there." None of it was true, but my tone carried just enough fear to make it believable. The hidden microphones would capture every word, my fake admissions, their reactions, their eagerness to exploit them. "Oh, Mom," Wren reached across the table, placing her hand over mine. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" "I was embarrassed," I whispered. "I didn't want to worry you, but it's getting worse, and I'm scared." Wade cleared his throat, his expression full of forced sympathy. "Sherry, what you're describing sounds like normal aging, but it's definitely something we should take seriously." "Do you think I should see a specialist?" I asked quietly. "Someone who understands these issues?" "Actually," Wren said quickly, "I may have already found someone who can help. Dr. Simmons is excellent with older patients." "You've been researching doctors for me?" Wren nodded. "I've been worried for a while, Mom. Some of the things you've said and done lately have concerned me." "Like what?" I asked. She glanced at Wade for reassurance before continuing. "Well, last month you called me 3 times in one day asking the same question about your insurance, and when Wade helped you organize your papers, you seemed confused about where things were kept. Lies, all of it, spoken so convincingly that I almost admired her performance. Maybe I should see this Dr. Simmons," I said softly. "I think that would be very wise," Wade agreed smoothly. "In fact, I already scheduled an appointment for you this Tuesday." "You already made an appointment? I hope you don't mind," he said, smiling politely. "We can cancel it if you'd prefer. I was just trying to be helpful." "No, it's fine," I said, hiding the satisfaction in my voice. "I appreciate you taking care of it." Their excitement was palpable now, the kind of quiet triumph that comes right before a victory you think is certain. "Mom," Wren said carefully, "there's something else we should talk about. If you are having some trouble with your memory, we need to make sure your affairs are in order." "What do you mean?" "Well, someone should have legal authority to make decisions for you if you ever can't," she said delicately. "Power of attorney, that kind of thing." There it was, the heart of their plan, delivered right on cue. "I suppose that makes sense," I murmured. "What would that involve?" "It's just standard paperwork," Wade explained. "It would let us help you with finances, medical decisions, legal matters, but only if you're unable to manage them yourself. It's purely protective." Wren nodded eagerly. "If something ever happened to you, Mom, we could make sure your wishes were respected. Your care, your home, everything." I let the silence stretch long enough for them to grow uneasy. Then I gave a small nod. "I trust you both completely," I said softly. "If you think it's necessary, then we should do it." Wren's smile was radiant. "I'm so glad you're being proactive, Mom. It really shows how responsible you are." "When would we take care of this paperwork?" I asked. Wade straightened. "If you're comfortable with it, I actually brought some forms tonight. We could get everything signed and notarized this week." Of course he had. "You brought the forms with you?" "I hope you don't mind," Wade said smoothly. "I just wanted to be prepared in case you were ready." He went to the car and returned with a black briefcase. From it, he spread a neat stack of documents across the dining room table. Power of attorney, healthcare directive, will amendment. "This is more comprehensive than I expected," I said, scanning the pages slowly. "We wanted to make sure everything was covered," Wren explained. "The healthcare directive allows us to make medical decisions if you're ever incapacitated. The financial one lets us manage your accounts and investments. And this last one," she said, tapping the paper nearest to me, "updates your will to make things simpler." I picked up the will amendment, reading each line carefully, the microphones recording every word, every breath, every incriminating promise they didn't yet realize they were making. It was exactly what I expected. The papers named Wren as my sole beneficiary and Wade as alternate executor, and hidden in the fine print was the clause that sealed their intent. They would inherit the moment I was declared incompetent, not after my death. "This seems very thorough," I said lightly. "But shouldn't my lawyer look these over first?" "That's up to you," Wade replied quickly. "These are standard forms, nothing unusual." Wren leaned forward. "Mom, waiting might not be a good idea. If your condition worsens, you might not be able to sign later." There it was, pressure dressed up as concern. "I suppose you're right," I said slowly. "If something happened to me tomorrow, you'd need these documents to help me?" "Exactly," Wren said gently. "We're just trying to protect you." I took the pen Wade offered, letting my hand tremble ever so slightly. "Where do I sign?" For 20 minutes they guided me through the signatures and initials, patient and attentive, masking their greed behind smiles of reassurance. When I was finished, Wade gathered every page with practiced care and slid them back into his briefcase. "I'll get these notarized first thing tomorrow," he said. "And I'll call Dr. Simmons to confirm Tuesday's appointment," Wren added, barely able to contain her excitement. They truly believed they had won, that I'd just signed away my life. "Thank you both for handling this," I said softly. "I feel so much better knowing you'll be there to help me." "Always, Mom," Wren said, embracing me. "We love you so much." But as they turned to leave, I saw Wade glance at his watch, impatient, already done with the performance. Their warmth faded the moment they thought their business was finished. As I watched them drive away, a strange calm settled over me. They believed they had trapped me. They didn't realize they'd been performing for my recorders the entire time, or that their documents would soon become evidence in a criminal case. The real trap had been set long before dinner, and they'd walked into it perfectly. Tuesday arrived warm and bright, as if the world itself knew justice was near. I dressed carefully, navy suit, polished shoes, the same outfit I had worn to my husband's funeral, to Wren's wedding, to every moment that had defined my strength. Today would define it again. Paul arrived at 9:30, briefcase in hand. Inside were copies of every recording, forged document, bank statement with the false address, and photographs of Wade stealing my mail from the Maple Street office. "Are you ready for this, Sherry?" he asked. "I've been ready since the day I heard them talk about getting rid of me," I replied. Detective Santos arrived soon after with 2 officers and a social worker named Janet Morrison. I served coffee in my best china, every cup perfectly matched, every napkin folded. A woman they claimed was confused doesn't host like that. "Mrs. Walsh," Detective Santos began, "we've reviewed everything. Today we'll be executing search warrants for the Maple Street office and your daughter's home. We'll also arrest them when they arrive for your appointment with Dr. Simmons." "What about the doctor?" I asked. "She's real, and she's been cooperating since yesterday. Apparently your daughter offered her $10,000 to write a false diagnosis without any evaluation." A cold satisfaction settled in my chest. Their deception was even deeper than I'd imagined. "What happens now?" "You'll call your daughter," the detective said. "Act unsure, a little scared. We need them to show up believing everything is going according to plan." At 11 o'clock, I dialed Wren. "Hi, sweetheart. I can't remember what time my appointment is today." "Mom, we've been over this," she said gently. "It's at 2. Wade and I are picking you up at 1:30. "Picking me up? I can drive myself." "No, Mom. Remember? You don't feel comfortable driving to new places anymore." "Oh, that's right," I said softly. "I'm sorry. I feel so scattered today." "That's okay, Mom," she said, voice dripping with false kindness. "That's exactly why we're seeing Dr. Simmons. She's going to help you feel better." "Wren, I'm scared," I whispered. "What if she finds something really wrong with me?" "Don't worry, Mom," Wren said soothingly. "Wade and I will take care of everything." "You won't have to worry about a thing ever again." Her words sounded loving, but the threat beneath them was as clear as day. At 1:15, I stood by the front window. Detective Santos and her team were already in position around the neighborhood. Paul sat beside me, silent and steady. "They'll be here any minute," he said. Wren's car pulled into the driveway exactly on schedule. She stepped out, checking her reflection in the car window. Wade followed, carrying an overnight bag. "The bag worries me," Paul murmured. "They probably plan to take me straight to a facility after the appointment," I said quietly. "No reason to bring me home if I wasn't coming back." The doorbell rang. I took a deep breath and opened the door to find Wren smiling brightly. But behind that smile was a flicker of something new, something that told me she was about to realize that the game had changed. The warmth I'd once seen in Wren's eyes, manufactured as it was, had vanished. What replaced it was colder, sharper, almost businesslike. "Hi, Mom. Ready to go?" she asked. "I think so. Should I bring anything?" "No need," Wade said, lifting the overnight bag with a faint smile. As we walked to their car, I caught sight of Detective Santos's unmarked sedan parked across the street. Everything was in place. The ride to Dr. Simmons's office was eerily silent. Wren usually filled the car with chatter updates about work, gossip, casual small talk. Today, she stared out the window while Wade drove with grim concentration. "Are you nervous, Mom?" Wren asked finally. "A little," I said. "What if she wants to put me in a hospital?" "If that's what's best for you," Wade answered firmly, "then that's what we'll do." They thought they were escorting me to my evaluation, the start of my confinement. But in truth, they were driving straight into their own. Dr. Simmons's waiting room was empty, except for us. The receptionist and undercover officer greeted us politely. "Mrs. Walsh, Dr. Simmons will see you in just a moment." We sat in uneasy silence. Wade checked his watch again and again. Wren fiddled with her purse strap. They were nervous, but for all the wrong reasons. "Wren Walsh and Wade Mitchell," the receptionist called. They both looked up. "There are some people here who need to speak with you." Detective Santos stepped out from the hallway, badge visible. "Wren Walsh, Wade Mitchell. You're under arrest for elder fraud, forgery, and conspiracy." The next moments blurred into motion. Protests, handcuffs, Miranda rights. "Mom, what's happening? What did you do?" Wren cried. "I protected myself," I said quietly. "Something I should have done months ago." "You set us up your own daughter?" "You were trying to steal my life, Wren. Everything I built. Did you really think I wouldn't fight back?" Wade said nothing as the officers led him away, but the hatred in his eyes said enough. "Mom, please," Wren shouted as they placed her in the squad car. "We can fix this. I'm your daughter." "No," I said clearly. "A daughter wouldn't do what you did." Later, Detective Santos drove me home. We sat quietly in the car for a while before she spoke. "How do you feel?" "Empty," I admitted, "but in a good way, like a weight's finally gone." "The district attorney says the evidence is solid," she said. "Recordings, forgeries, bribery, it's airtight." "What happens now?" "They'll be charged, probably make plea deals. Wade faces the heavier penalties. You should expect them to reach out letters, calls, apologies. That's your choice. But remember, people like that aren't sorry until they're caught." That evening, my sister Margaret came over. We poured tea and opened old photo albums, staring at pictures of Wren's childhood. "She was such a sweet little girl," Margaret said softly. "What happened to her?" "I think she was always like this," I replied. "I just refused to see it." "Do you think you'll ever forgive her?" I thought for a long moment. "I don't know. Right now, I'm just grateful to be free." Over the next few weeks, I rebuilt my life piece by piece. New locks, new bank accounts, new beginnings. And for the first time, I did something for others. I started teaching financial literacy classes at the community center, helping seniors protect themselves from the kind of fraud I'd nearly fallen victim to. Paul kept me updated on the case. Wade faced multiple felony charges. Wren's were lighter, but she'd still serve time. "She wants to see you," Paul told me one afternoon. "She's asking her lawyer to arrange a meeting." "What for?" "To apologize, maybe, to show remorse." "And what do you think I should do?" "That's up to you," he said gently. But remember, you don't owe her anything. 3 months later, I received a letter from Ren. At first, I nearly threw it away. Then curiosity won. Mom, I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but I need you to know how sorry I am. 3 pages of explanations, regrets, and promises that she meant well. I read it twice, then fed it to the fire. Some betrayals are too deep for forgiveness. Some relationships can't be repaired, no matter how much love once existed. Ren made her choice when she treated me as a target, not as her mother. And that was the last choice I allowed her to make for me. On my 64th birthday, I threw myself a party. Margaret came, along with my new friends from the center, neighbors, even Paul and his wife. We ate cake, laughed, and celebrated not just my birthday, but my freedom. Looking around the room, I realized something profound. Family isn't defined by blood. Sometimes it's the people who choose to stand beside you who truly deserve the name. I still felt a quiet sadness for the daughter I thought I had, but it was overshadowed by peace. At 64, I was starting over, surrounded by genuine love and respect, and for the first time in years, that was enough. Now I want to hear from you. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Have you ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. And before you go, I've left 2 more powerful true-life stories on the screen, each one filled with twists you won't see coming. Thank you for watching until the end.